We all know how strong the bond between a father and his daughter can be. But what happens when that bond goes a little too far? In this story, what began as a happy reunion between a young girl and her biological parents turned horribly disturbing, resulting in jealousy and murder. A story in which almost everyone is on the losing side. Join us as we take you through the story of Steven and Katie Pladl, piecing together what really happened in this love story that turned deadly. It was 1995, and 20-year-old Steven Pladl had just met a girl over the internet. Her name was Alyssa Garcia, and although she was just 15 at the time, Steven hoped to start a serious relationship with her despite her age.
Steven had met his first wife. He was 20 years old, and she was about 15 years old.
She agreed, and they got to know each other over the next couple of years. Within 2 years of their relationship, Alyssa became pregnant with their first child, a girl whom they named Denise. Denise was born in January 1998. The perfect addition to bind Steven and Alyssa's relationship forever, if only that could be true. This was not the case. Steven soon started physically abusing their baby, including locking the baby up in a cooler till almost all the oxygen was used up. As time went on, Alyssa started to get worried and began to realize that she might have to make a big decision for Denise's safety. They were a poor young couple who could barely care for themselves, let alone a baby. Their financial situation, plus Steven's physical abuse of their daughter, pushed Alyssa to put Denise up for adoption. As Alyssa explained in an interview, it broke her heart that she had to let her daughter go, but she knew it was the right thing to do if she wanted her daughter to live a better life.
He was verbally, emotionally, and mentally abusive throughout our 20 years together. He did do many violent things. He had nearly beaten to death one cat and did beat to death another cat. He would go long periods of time of not talking to his family. He was extremely isolated.
After Alyssa and Steven give up their daughter for adoption, shockingly, Alyssa decides she wants to stay with Steven, and their marriage lasts almost 2 more decades.
8-month-old Denise was graciously adopted by Anthony and Kelly Fusco, a wonderful couple who lived a good life in Dover, New York. They renamed the young girl Katie and established a good relationship with her as their new daughter. According to Kerry Gould, Kelly Fusco's brother, Kelly grew up to be a lover of animals, and she was even a vegetarian. As Katie grew up, she developed an interest in arts while in school. She was well known at Dover High School for drawing comics. Katie had planned to study digital advertising in college. When Katie turned 18 in January of 2016, she was curious about her birth parents, and with the help of social media, she was able to find them. Katie and her adoptive parents never knew about the abuse she endured as a baby. By August, Katie was supposed to attend college. However, she chose to pursue a reunion with her biological parents and moved in with them in their home in Henrico County, Virginia. This got Kelly and Tony Fusco pretty worried, but they supported her in her decision to explore that part of her life.
Katie's parents are obviously troubled by this situation, but she's 18 and there's nothing they can do legally to stop her, so they decide to support her.
Despite the abuse of baby Katie, Alyssa went on to have 2 more children with Steven. Katie had 2 sisters she would get to know. She desperately wanted to connect with her birth parents in the hopes of building good family bonds with them. However, Katie soon learned that her biological parents have their own set of family issues. Steven was very short-tempered, often breaking into a rage. He would physically destroy things around the house whenever he was angry, not even concerned about the presence of his 2 young daughters watching everything unfold. Steven's inability to get a stable job also left Alyssa to take care of almost everything to hold the family together, putting a lot of stress on her. By the time Katie moved in with them, Steven and Alyssa were already sleeping in separate rooms. Katie's arrival only pushed them further apart instead of bringing them closer as a family. However, Steven's behavior changed after Katie arrived. He shaved his beard and started to wear fitted shirts and skinny jeans, as if he was putting in an effort to take care of himself. He wanted to try and be a good father to Katie now. What is weird, though, was that Steven slept on the floor in Katie's room sometimes. Katie thought it was sweet. Steven missed getting to help her fall asleep when she was a child and was making up for it. She assumed he was probably feeling guilty and he wasn't there for her childhood. Alyssa, however, noticed Steven's actions were more awkward and it seemed like he was trying to connect with Katie on a romantic level. Alyssa tried to press Steven for an explanation, but she just made Steven angry and he stormed out of the house in a rage. She even decided that she needed to open up to Katie about her past and tried to explain to her how Steven physically abused her as a baby. but somehow that only drove Katie closer to him. Steven's relationship with his daughter became more than any normal loving father-daughter relationship. They were in love.
So Steven convinces his wife to let this 18-year-old woman come and live with them. And Alyssa agreed because she didn't think that Steven would dare do anything. But as it turns out, Steven was having sex with her the entire time in the next bedroom.
By November, Alyssa was fed up with all the issues and the bad family environment, so she decided to move out of the house with their 2 other kids and filed for divorce from Steven. She and Steven shared custody of the 2 girls, but their older 11-year-old daughter decided to stay living with him. Although Alyssa knew of their romantic relationship, she was disgusted when she discovered that Katie was pregnant with Steven's baby. In May 2017, while Alyssa was reading her 11-year-old daughter's journal, she realized that the relationship between Steven and Katie was deeper than she thought. In the journal, her 11-year-old daughter referred to her dad, Steven, as Satan and concluded that their baby must be a half-demon. Alyssa was shocked at what she discovered, and she was troubled and couldn't understand why her daughter chose to live there and wanted to continue living with him. She could tell it was still a bad environment. She called Steven immediately, and he simply told her that she should have known that they were in love for real. Alyssa was furious. She started screaming and cursing him over the phone, even expressing that Katie was merely a child, his child. Alyssa knew she had to do something and reported the whole situation to the police. Despite investigations by law enforcement, no arrests were made and Steven and Katie kept living together under the same roof. On July 20th, 2017, Steven and Katie decided to take their relationship to the next step and get married. Because Maryland law prohibits father-daughter relationships, they lied about their biological relationship on their marriage application to be able to get married. Surprisingly, both of Katie's adoptive parents attended the wedding alongside Steven's mother, Grace. They can all be seen smiling with the new couple in several photos. According to Anthony and Kelly Fusco, they only attended the wedding because all they could do was sit on the sidelines and support their adopted daughter. They gave her the best life they could, but she was an adult now and was allowed to make her own decisions. Katie and Steven welcomed their first child together on September 1st. They named him Bennett, and it was around this time that the couple moved to their new house in Knightdale, North Carolina. In early January, following subsequent police investigations, Steven and Katie were eventually arrested on charges of incest and extradited back to Virginia. While in police custody, DNA tests were conducted on the couple and their young son to check for familiar genetics. The test came back positive, proving Katie and Steven were biologically related. The police charged the couple with incest, adultery, and contributing to delinquency. In court, Steven's lawyer argued that Steven pressured Katie into a relationship and she never claimed that he did. Rather, it was simply the case of an 18-year-old who developed a stronger than expected bond with her 40-year-old father because they are biologically related. According to him, Steven was head over heels in love with Katie, so much so that it outweighed the fact that they were related biologically and that Katie felt the same way. Steven posted bail and was released on the condition that he would not leave the state of Virginia and that he would not have any contact with Katie. However, the judge didn't stop him from seeing his young son Bennett, who was placed in the care of Grace, Steven's 72-year-old mother, after Steven and Katie were arrested. Katie was also released on bail, and she was also told not to have any contact with Steven. After being released, Katie moved back in with her adoptive parents in Dover, New York, and they welcomed her with open arms. However, contrary to the no-contact order she was given, Katie called Steven. Little did she know what a horrible choice she just made. Katie told Steven that she was making changes in her life and was no longer interested in their relationship, and she wanted to end things. This greatly upset Steven. He felt like he had lost all he had in the world. As we are familiar with his anger problems, you could imagine how Steven became a ticking time bomb, ready to explode. Steven decided to act on his rage this time, worse than ever before. On Wednesday, April 11, 2018, Steven went to his mother's house to pick up his son, Bennett. He told his mother that he was taking the child to New York to see Katie. However, that was a lie, and Steven took Bennett to his home in North Carolina, where he strangled him to death and left his body in a closet. He then drove over 600 miles through the night to New York, where he planned to meet up with Katie and confront her. By morning, he arrived at Tony and Kelly Fusco's house, where he waited patiently in his blue minivan, observing the movements within the house. Within a few hours, a Toyota pickup truck emerged with Katie and Tony inside. From available CCTV footage, Steven's minivan can be seen following them as they drive off. Just a few minutes later, 911 operators received a call from an off-duty firefighter reporting that someone had just shot the occupants of a Toyota pickup. It was Tony and Katie. They had been shot dead by Steven in their truck. Operators then received a frantic call from Steven's mother in which she described that Steven told her how he killed his child, Katie, and Tony Fusco.
911. Yes. My son just called me, and he told me he killed his baby.
Did he say how he did it? Or what?
No, and I didn't ask him. I didn't want to know. He said he was on his way to New York.
I have a lady wanting to report a possible homicide, and she states that she got a call from her son this morning stating that his wife had split up with him, and she was in New York, and that he killed their baby, left him upstairs at the residence.
Just 5 miles from where Katie and Tony's pickup was discovered with their bodies inside, Steven's car was found parked on the side of the road. When the police pulled up to arrest him and take him in, they were met with another death. Steven had killed himself.